Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Infuse Your Future podcast, where we bring together people and ideas who make the world a better place. I'm your host, Carla Pursnani. Let's head into today's episode. I'm excited to announce my guest today, Sabrina Trobak. She's from Northern BC, Canada, and is a counselor and an author. And she has a book called Not Good Enough, Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety. Hi, Sabrina. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, grown up most of my life in Fort St. John, BC. I was a teacher for over 20 years, mostly a learning assistant teacher. Then, towards the end of my career, was a vice principal and a school counselor. And at the end of my school counseling kind of years, I went to a workshop on understanding suicide. And it was presented by a man named Tony Martins. And at the end of the 3-day workshop, I just thought, this is what I need to do. So he put his contact information up at the end of the workshop. So I started contacting him. And after about a year, he agreed to teach me my model of his model of therapy. So I quit teaching and moved back to Fort St. John and started my own private practice here based on this model of therapy that he practices, which it basically comes back to it's all about our core belief. And so it's looking at things from a bit of a different perspective instead of just focusing on the symptoms like anxiety, depression, insomnia, gambling, alcohol. It's looking at a deeper level, looking at that core belief piece. And within about 6 months of starting my business, I've had a waiting list, and I started in 2010. So I decided I need to do something because I hate having to tell people, sorry, I've got a year and a half waiting list. There's nothing I can really do for you. So that's where the book came into play. I decided to write a book. Never ever thought I'd be a writer. Took about 7 years off and on of working on the book, and got it published. And so now I can at least offer something to people who maybe can't afford counseling or have waiting lists or don't have access. Gives them a resource they can use to help them kind of sort through some of the things that they're going on, help them manage and understand their anxiety and maybe a bit of a different way in looking at it from that core belief perspective.
That's so great. I know anxiety can really bring you to your knees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so
Mm-hmm.
true. It's really about the core belief.
Yeah, for sure. So the model kind of says that everything comes back to our core belief, and that core belief is often not good enough, not important, not valued. And so if your core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, you're going to struggle with self-doubt, with insecurity. You're going to have more anxiety. If your core belief is good enough, important, and valued, you're going to feel more confident, more empowered, more content. And so we want to look at how do we challenge and create more of that core belief, good enough, important, and valued. We're constantly trying to prove to ourselves that our core belief is true. So if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm ultimately going to be drawn to things that reinforce and support that core belief. And if I'm doing things that reinforce the core belief, good enough, important, and valued, but that's not really my belief, it doesn't usually last very long, or we end up sabotaging ourselves so that we can go back to that kind of normal place, what feels normal for us, of that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued.
Now, why do you think so many people have that negative core belief? Why doesn't it seem like the default is the positive core belief? And then how can you build and maintain a positive core belief without kind of veering off into toxic narcissism?
Yeah. And really, if you even look behind that toxic narcissism, that's a really massive core belief of not good enough, not important, not valued.
Oh,
That's just the shell they use to protect that core belief that's there. Um, I think basically it definitely has to do with childhood experiences, childhood traumas definitely play a role in that core belief. But I think one of the things that's really massive throughout our society is we are not good at feeling our emotions. We have been taught since we were very little to push them down and lock them away. Well, if I'm holding in all of these emotions, I'm not going to believe in myself as much that I can handle things, because any little thing, I can't find my keys, becomes overwhelming for me. So then that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, becomes more and more significant. So part of what I do with my clients in counseling is we really work on what are the actual emotions that you're feeling and getting better at being able to identify them and let them out. As we let the emotions out, then we feel more and more confident that we can handle daily things that happen. And then that core belief starts to shift. Now, if there is a lot of childhood trauma, we need to go back and address and resolve that as well. But even when we look at childhood trauma, the experiences are over with. They're in the past. There's nothing we can really do about them. What we carry is the emotional impact of all that trauma. So we need to get better at being able to sort through and feel our emotions and let them out rather than suppress them and push them down.
Do you have any, I guess, data on what percentage of the population carries around these negative core beliefs?
I don't have any data, but I would say 100%, because we all feel a little bit not good enough, not important, not valued at sometimes, and good enough, important, and valued at sometimes. It's just the weighing of it. When we look at how much anger there is, how much anxiety there is in our society, that all suggests that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. So I would say, just from kind of observation of what we see happening in our society, that is a fairly high percentage, I would guess. People
And
who
I would
have
imagine,
anxiety is high. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
it would really depend on the culture that you're raised in, because, in some countries, it really depends on, your sex at birth, your position in the community, and then society treats you a certain way based on the societal beliefs.
Absolutely. And if you grow up in a country where there's war or volatility just within the country that you live in, that's absolutely going to feed into that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, for sure. Yeah, you're always in survival mode. That's not going to develop a healthy core belief, for sure.
And even a lot of religions, you know, the whole basis is you're born a sinner. So that, uh, how do you feel like that plays into it?
Again, everyone is a little bit different, but if religion is being used as a way of creating fear, creating obedience, then it's likely reinforcing and supporting more of that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. Judgment, anything along those lines, it's not going to be creating a healthier core belief.
Yeah, so true. Now, what made you passionate about this? I mean, you talked about being a teacher and then a principal, and then you had this desire to go and start helping people out of this dark pit of anxiety and lack of core belief. So, what made you passionate about this?
I've always wanted to be a helper. Even in kindergarten, I was the kindergarten helper that went and helped other kindergartners tie their shoes and zip their coats up. So I've always wanted to be a teacher. And as a teacher, as a learning assistant teacher, especially, you really get to do a lot of work with kids and help them read and see a lot of growth and all those kind of things. But as a teacher, your mandate is not that underlying stuff. It's not the anxiety. There's a lot of just band-aids and getting them through the day. And when I went to this workshop, it kind of looked at it from a very different perspective of, no, stop looking at the symptoms. Let's figure out that core belief and how do we change and challenge that core belief. And once I realized I could take that to an even deeper level, it just drew me in that was definitely what I needed to do. I love teaching, and that's part of why I still like counseling, is because even as a counselor, there's a lot of teaching that I'm doing with my clients where we're looking at and exploring and understanding things in a different way. So I still am teaching. I love teaching, but I just was able to see that I could do something in a bit of a different way. Teaching is unfortunately a lot of, band-aids, just help them get through the day. But then ultimately they go back to their environments. There's the chaos. There's, whatever is going on at home, come back to the school the next day and you're starting all over again. Whereas with this approach, it's very different. I do work with kids, but I'll only work with kids if I'm working with the adults as well. So it rolls downhill. It's much harder for kids to try to kind of teach their parents, but for parents to be able to pass the information on to their children, it's much easier. So if I'm working with kids, I really want to be working with the parents as well. And often what we see happening is the kids kind of, slowly stop counseling, and I continue working with the parents because the parents are now doing that with their kids, which ultimately is what it should look like anyways.
And that must feel so good. You're
Oh,
breaking the cycle of generational trauma and really just helping society and the world in general with the deep, deep healing that needs to happen.
it is, yes, I love my job. I absolutely love seeing people, get that light bulb moment, make those connections, feeling more happy, understanding what's going on for them, managing their anxiety in a very different way. Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff for sure.
And I love hearing when people are trying to learn all this and change their things, especially before they have kids or while they have kids, so that they don't pass down the same things that they had to endure when they were kids.
Exactly. Yes. I like working with the young ones that don't have any kids yet, because yeah, they can make a huge difference right from the get-go. That being said, some of my oldest clients are in their 70s, and they are making a difference in their family dynamic right now, and as grandparents and sometimes even great grandparents, but they're still able to make a difference in that cycle as well.
Gosh, so true. So true. So, what do you feel are the most important aspects of core belief that people should pay attention to?
I think, yeah, a lot of people aren't even really aware of what that core belief is. So we need to get a better understanding of what is that core belief? What do I really believe about myself? And then how do I reinforce and support that belief? Anxiety is a really, really, really big one. A lot of people think, anxiety is about the triggers. I have anxiety of heights, for example. Well, if it was about heights, then every single person on the face of the earth would have anxiety of heights. Not everyone does. So it's not about heights. Anxiety is about my belief in my ability to handle something. So if I believe I can handle heights, I'm not going to have anxiety. If I believe I can't handle heights, I'm going to have anxiety. So if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I am going to have more self doubt, not believe in myself as much. Therefore, I'm going to have more anxiety. So we
Wow.
need to, yeah, so we need to get better at understanding what does that core belief look like? Okay, I have anxiety of heights. Well, it's really about me not believing in myself that I can handle that. Why? What's the self talk that's going on that's reinforcing and supporting that belief? What do I do to challenge and change that core belief so I start believing more in myself that I can handle everything, not just one thing at a time?
Right. Now, what does it look like when someone goes through the process with you?
So we start with really talking about anxiety and really breaking it down. I think, if you Google symptoms of anxiety, it'll often tell you what it is when it's really, really high, but it doesn't tell you about some of the more subtle symptoms of anxiety. So what that means is we're not really going to do anything about our anxiety until it's really, really high. Well, by then, I got a lot of work to do to bring it back down if I'm even able to use my logic and reason, because by then I've got so much cortisol in my brain. Cortisol is that chemical that gets dumped into your brain with anxiety that shuts your brain off so you can't think properly. You're just in that fight, flight, freeze mode. So we need to become more aware of what are more of the subtle symptoms of our anxiety as it goes higher and higher and higher. The more we can become aware of those and put strategies in place earlier, then my anxiety doesn't have to keep escalating and going to that high level. So that's where we definitely always start, is really looking at that anxiety, figuring out what each person's symptoms of anxiety look like so that they can start to become more aware, and then put a plan in place looking at strategies to help manage and bring that anxiety down. Then what I do is take time with clients where they tell me their life story. So as they're telling me everything about themselves, I'm running it through my head thinking, okay, how is this connected to that core belief? And so I'm looking at experiences that they've been through that have likely reinforced and supported the development of that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. After we've done all that gathering information, Then I make a plan and go back and look at those things. And we go back and try to figure out, okay, what are some of the key pieces here that we really need to go back and resolve so that we can let go of those things, dealing with the emotional piece of it as well, but also just getting a better understanding so we can let it go at a different level. As we're doing that, I mean, even dealing with the anxiety, we're challenging and changing that core belief. But as the process continues, that core belief, good enough, important, and valued, continues to grow and grow and grow. The model I practice is a long-term model of therapy. Most of my clients are with me a year and a half, sometimes even longer, a lot of times even longer, because we're, taking your whole life to create your core belief. It's not going to go away in 4 to 6 sessions. So it takes time to go back and sort through and change it. We need to practice those behaviors over and over and over so they become the new normal.
So true.
Yeah.
Would you like to share the top 3 strategies for building your inner core belief?
Well, so if we look at anxiety, so one of the key things for anxiety is breathing, taking some deep breaths. There's research that shows that it actually stops that cortisol from being dumped into your brain. So it can be a really useful strategy. And what I usually say to my clients is don't wait until your anxiety is really, really high. Breathe regularly. If you take 2 or 3 deep breaths every hour, a couple times an hour, every couple hours, you will notice a difference in how stressed you are at the end of the day. So, and just try to incorporate it into something that you're already doing. So, every time you go to the bathroom, take a deep breath. Every time you have a drink of water, take a deep breath. So it's not something you have to add. It's just something you're incorporating into what you're already doing. So that's number one, is just work on the breathing. The other one is probably making a plan. So if we say anxiety is about lack of confidence, not believing in myself, I can handle something. If we have a plan, we feel more confident in our ability to handle it. So often people get these worry thoughts that just spin and spin and spin and spin. But if we actually took that worry thought and wrote it down and made a plan on how we would handle it, we would handle it well. And so we end up worrying about these things that most likely aren't even going to happen a lot of the times. But even if we were to look at if it did happen, what would we do? Make a plan. That anxiety goes down. And usually that spinning thought subsides, often even goes away. So getting better at making a plan and figuring out, okay, if this happens, what do I do? Then even going at worst case scenario, okay, what's the worst that could possibly happen? And we realize, oh, I could even handle that. So we start convincing ourselves more, proving to ourselves more that we can handle these things that we're worrying about, that really, if they actually happened, they would be a non-issue. We are way more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And when we take those worry thoughts and really think about what would I do to handle it, it's usually much more manageable for sure. So that would be the second one, is making a plan. And the third one I think that's really important is probably journaling or writing or getting it out. So whether that's art for you or music or whatever it is, but finding a way to just get that stuff out. We keep it all locked inside of us. We need to find a way to get it out. Often saying it creates too much emotion. It's too overwhelming. But writing allows us to do that more in a more safe way. So when we write, we're actually tapping more into our unconscious thoughts. So often when we'll write, we'll come up with things that we didn't even realize we were thinking about. So going back and reading your writing can also be really helpful. I don't think you need to write every day. I think you write when you feel you need to. So when you feel like something's going off, you're just off, you're having a bad day, you've had a bad few days, that's a really good time to just get out a pen and paper. And I often get clients say, well, what should my writing topic sentence be? We want to keep it very general because we don't really know what's going on in there. And so the more we keep it general, the more we're allowing our brain to go wherever it needs to go. So often just starting with something like, I feel off, or what's going on with me today? What am I feeling? And just kind of writing from there, it allows our brain to go wherever it needs to go to figure that out. When you go back and read your writing, go back and look, and if it's events, like, I'm going on a trip and I don't know if we have enough money for the trip. And, I hope we get along on the trip, right? We might end up arguing on the trip. So then I would say to them, okay, so now let's go back and look at the emotions. So, what are the emotions you feel around the trip? What are the emotions you feel around the finances of the trip? What are the emotions that you feel around getting into a fight or an argument on the trip? So now we're getting more of that emotional release and letting that out. Then go back again. What core belief is being triggered? Not good enough, not important, not valued. So, which core belief is being triggered with each of those events? That really allows that writing as an opportunity to really dig deeper and resolve some of that stuff at a level that we may not even really realize is going on for us.
It's just so deep. Do you have any transformational stories that you'd be able to share?
I would say, like, the vast majority of my clients come in feeling very stuck, very lost, very unhappy, and they find themselves through the journey of the counseling, and they get to a place where, our end goal is ultimately contentment, just feeling content. If I believe I'm good enough, important, and valued, I don't have to worry about anything because whatever comes up, I believe in myself, I can handle it. So, most of my clients that continue and make it to the end, that's often where they get is to that place of just feeling content. For me personally, when I started this, you got to practice what you preach for sure. And so when I was learning the model of therapy, I was also applying a lot of it to myself and realizing that, I thought I was doing pretty good. I thought, I don't really have that much anxiety. I'm pretty good at feeling my emotions. Not so much. Didn't like to feel lonely, vulnerable, rejection, abandoned, powerless. So getting better at being able to feel those emotions and realize that, yeah, they may not feel comfortable when I'm actually feeling them, but when I get to the other side, it feels better. I'm going to feel things that I never even really realized that I could feel as I get better. So many times the emotion comes up and we just stop dead in our tracks and don't push through that emotion. The end goal of this counseling isn't that you don't feel emotion, it's that you don't let emotions stop you. You just realize, oh, there's fear, there's vulnerability. Okay, let's move through it and get to the other side of it. Then the doors open all over the place for you.
And I would imagine that the feeling in your body is just so much more amazing. From my understanding, people that go through childhood trauma or any kind of trauma, they can become emotionally numb. They can become like robots. They can be just so tense that they're basically just walking around like they're a zombie, just going through the
Yeah.
motions. And that can't feel good. So when you're able to
No,
release all that and be in the world and feel good about it, there, I think that's priceless.
it is. And I'll often say to my clients, I can't tell you what it's going to feel like at the end because you have nothing to compare it to. And then when we get to the end, they say, you're right. I would have never known this is what I could feel like at the end here. But it's true, like an anxious body is a tense body. And then what do we do to push those emotions down? Numbing it. What does that look like? Is it marijuana? Is it alcohol? Is it drugs? Is it gambling? Is it, um, you know, uh, thoughts of suicide? Even OCD. If my brain is busy counting all these things, obsessing over all these things, I don't have to really sort through and feel what's going on inside. So the better we get at being able to deal with ourselves and figure out who we are, then we can start to heal in a much deeper way. For a lot of us, men and women, we're often trying to be what we think everyone else wants us to be, which means I'm not really spending any time figuring out who I want to be. Once we let that go and really stop and focus on who I want to be, then we can move forward. When I went through this process, I thought, I'd lost myself. I was married, I had separated, had 2 kids, was a teacher, working on my master's. I thought I lost myself. What I realized is I'd never actually found myself to begin with. I didn't know who I was to start off with. I know who, other people wanted me to be. I know who my students wanted me to be, my ex-partner, my kids, my mom, my dad, my coaches, right? But me, never really stopped and thought about what I wanted to be. Once I stopped and started figuring that out and stopped worrying about what I thought other people wanted me to be, totally different world for sure.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And I
And
feel like
again,
the truth.
that feeds in with that core belief, right? If I don't even know who I am, how can I feel good enough, important, and valued? I can't. But as I figure out who I am, now I start to feel more good enough, important, and valued.
And sometimes you really need to have someone walking through that with you, because the change can be dramatic. It's worth it, but it can be dramatic. You may not have people in your environment that are supporting you through it, people in your environment that are ready for you to change.
Yes, absolutely. We talk a lot in counseling about the crab in the bucket syndrome. So if you're out crabbing and you've got a bucket of crabs and one starts to climb out, the other ones will grab it and pull it back into the bucket. And so we often see that in counseling where one person is getting healthier, figuring things out, and their family, their friends around them want to kind of pull them back. As long as we're all struggling, no one has to really acknowledge anything. But once one person starts to heal, it kind of sheds a light on everyone else and how everyone else is struggling. So that can be really hard. It can be very alone and isolating for sure if you're kind of working on things and now you're looking around and going, oh man, these guys are struggling and it doesn't meet my needs anymore. It doesn't fit. It can be really, really isolating for sure. Yeah.
Right. And I would imagine you need really good boundaries at that point, especially if you're in a situation where you can't just change friends or change families or,
Right. And
leave a relationship.
exactly. And even boundaries is a tricky one because if my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, my boundaries aren't going to be very great. I'm often going to not really have a voice, not say much. So I'm not going to put a lot of boundaries in place, or I'm going to be overbearing and controlling where my boundaries are number one. I don't care about anyone else's boundaries. But as my core belief shifts and I feel more good enough, important, and valued, then I can reevaluate and figure out more, what do I need for my boundary for right now for what's going on in the situation? We often see people who try to put boundaries around others. You can't put boundaries around others. You have no control over them. All you can do is put a boundary around yourself. How am I going to handle this situation? What am I going to do? When your core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, you often go from one extreme of the boundary to the other. So they're either really harsh or none at all. We don't have a lot of that gray because I don't believe in myself that I can handle figuring out what the gray is. As that core belief becomes more good enough, important, and valued, now I'm able to go to the gray and figure out what's my boundary today. Might be different tomorrow, might be different next month. But right now, what's the boundary I need? Because I trust and believe in myself that I can handle making those decisions. But if I don't believe in myself, I got to go more to one extreme or the other for boundaries.
So deep, such great conversation. Are there any other points that you would like to make before we start wrapping things up?
I just think start slow. Often people with high anxiety, they take these big leaps, right? It's kind of that all or nothing, kind of one end of the pendulum to the other. Start small. Just little tiny steps are way more sustainable. When we take these big steps, it just becomes too overwhelming. And so then we end up not not doing anything at all. So what I usually say is when you think about doing something different, don't even start doing it different. Just start thinking about what it would look like to do it differently. So if I have a client who says, I want to start exercising a bit more, I say, okay, well, take some time and just think about what that would look like, what that would feel like. How could you fit it into your day? Don't do anything different yet. Just start thinking about it. So now we're starting to develop that pathway in our brain of exercising more. I haven't even done anything different. And then we start with small things like park a little bit farther away in the grocery store, walk up and down your stairs a little bit more, walk to the end of the block, slowly increase that. After you've done that for 2-3 weeks and that feels a bit more stable, then you can add a little bit more to it. The smaller the steps, the more sustainable they are, the more likely you're going to follow through on it. Every time we learn something new, we have to create a new pathway in our brain. And that takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of repetition before that pathway becomes significant. So even thinking about what it's going to look like can be really important. People say they're in an unhealthy relationship and they want out. I say, just start thinking about what that looks like. Start thinking about a plan. You don't have to jump and do anything right now. Right now it's a blank slate. You don't know what that looks like. We got to create some the map there, and figure out some pathways of what it looks like. Start thinking about what that looks like. How do you handle the finances? How do you handle the kids? How do you handle your ex-partner? How do you handle the school? All those different pieces. When your brain starts figuring that out, then it feels more safe to make those steps. So slow steps, think about it a little bit at a time. Every time you do that, every time you challenge yourself, you're developing that core belief: good enough, important, and valued.
I love that. And usually I ask for a call to action at the end of the program. So I think you just gave everybody one.
There you go. Small steps for sure.
Now, if someone wants to work with you and go through your program, how do they contact you?
Well, I have my website is trobakholistic.org. And on that website has all my contact information. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, Trobak Holistic Counseling, YouTube, Trobak Holistic Counseling. I do a lot of videos on just this different kind of pieces of information. I'm on Instagram at NGE, so for not good enough, NGE underscore Trobak. And I just started TikTok. And that,
Congratulations.
yeah, yeah, that one is NGE underscore core underscore belief. But that's just new, just started it a couple months ago. And then I've also written a book called Not Good Enough: Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety. And it is a handbook. So it's written so that you read a little bit of information and then you apply that to your own personal experiences, so that you start to get a better understanding of your core belief and start to get more tools that you can use to help you manage and do things a bit differently as well.
And where do people buy your book at?
My book is available on Amazon. So in the US, it's on Amazon.com. In Canada, Amazon.ca. On my website, there is a link to Amazon.com, Amazon.ca as well.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing all this great information.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to be here.
All right, thanks for listening, and I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. I would love it if you clicked like or subscribe and even share this episode with someone else that you think might enjoy it. Have a great day.